On that fateful morning, as I tied my boat to the small pier, my mind was still in turmoil. I had been rowing for 2 hours and was exhausted. My hands ached as if cut by a knife, and my palms were blistered. But I didn't care. I had done what I needed to do. I uneasily cast one last glance at the misty sea. Then I turned and walked towards the house, ignoring the pebbles digging into my bare feet. I had just turned 19. It was a period when I was having serious problems with my family due to their concerns about my future. At a time when I was tired of arguing and thinking, my parents' short trip to New York had given me a few days to catch my breath. We had been coming to this coastal town every summer since my childhood. My father had built a beautiful house on one of the small bays along the shore. The view from our balcony was unparalleled. Our garden always seemed like an endless place to me. The surroundings were disconcertingly secluded. But if you asked my father, this was precisely why he had our summer house built here. Since there were no other houses in the bay, my father had a rather high wall built around our garden, figuring it would make my always anxious mother feel safe. In the end, it really did work out that way. My mother wasn't afraid to stay here alone, even at night. After breakfast, I went out to meet my friends. I was going to the Smiths. Their summer house was in the next bay over. Unlike ours, it wasn't secluded and rocky. Emily had insisted I come. I had said okay. As I climbed the hill, I saw Jack in the distance. He had appeared before me in a way that could hardly be called coincidental. He was wandering aimlessly as usual. Despite his wild spirit and reckless nature, I liked Jack. I enjoyed his endless energy and that childlike sense of adventure inside him. I secretly admired his carefree attitude and disregard for life's worries. My parents never liked Jack, who was a few years older than me, nor did they approve of my friendship with him. According to my father, he was a good-for-nothing who seemed born to embarrass his family in front of everyone. He didn't fit into our refined and respectable community at all. His record of misdeeds was shamefully extensive. He had gotten a girl pregnant and had been in trouble a few times for forged checks or signatures. These incidents, the full details of which no one really knew, had been hushed up thanks to the money and influence of Jack's father, whom he referred to as the old man. As Jack approached, I could see the mischievous glint in his eyes. He grinned widely, his unruly hair tousled by the sea breeze. "Well, well, if it isn't the golden boy," he called out, his voice carrying a hint of playful mockery. "Sneaking out while Mommy and Daddy are away?" I rolled my eyes but couldn't help smiling. "Just heading to the Smiths." Emily invited me over. Jack's eyebrows shot up. "Emily, huh? Sounds boring. How about we make today interesting instead?" I hesitated. Jack's idea of interesting often led to trouble, but I couldn't deny the allure of adventure. "What did you have in mind?" He leaned in conspiratorially. "I heard about this abandoned mansion further down the coast. They say it's haunted. Want to check it out?" My heart raced with a mix of excitement and apprehension. I knew I should decline, head to the Smiths as planned, be the responsible person my parents wanted me to be. But Jack's infectious enthusiasm was hard to resist. "Come on," he urged, sensing my wavering resolve. "Live a little. When was the last time you did something truly exhilarating?" I thought about the monotonous arguments with my parents, the suffocating expectations, the carefully planned future that felt more like a prison. In that moment, the idea of exploring a supposedly haunted mansion seemed like a breath of fresh air. "All right," I found myself saying. "Let's do it." Jack's face lit up with triumph. "That's the spirit. Trust me, this'll be a day you'll never forget." As we set off down the coastal path, away from the safety of my familiar surroundings, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was crossing a line. But with each step, the weight of expectation seemed to lift from my shoulders, replaced by a thrilling sense of freedom. Little did I know that this impulsive decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change my life forever, challenging everything I thought I knew about myself, my family, and the seemingly idyllic coastal town I'd known since childhood. As Jack and I made our way along the rugged coastal path, the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a shimmering glow on the restless sea. The salty breeze whipped through our hair, carrying with it a sense of anticipation and danger. "Zo, tell me more about this haunted mansion," I said, trying to mask my nervousness with curiosity. Jack's eyes gleamed with excitement. "They say it belonged to an eccentric millionaire back in the 1920s. He vanished without a trace one stormy night, and ever since people have reported strange noises and eerie lights coming from the place." I scoffed. "You don't actually believe in ghosts, do you?" "Maybe, maybe not," he shrugged. "But I believe in adventure, and that's exactly what we're going to find." After about an hour of walking, we rounded a bend, and there it was, a decaying Victorian mansion, perched precariously on a cliff edge. Its once grand facade was now weathered and crumbling, windows dark and shuttered like sightless eyes. As we approached, a chill ran down my spine despite the warm day. The mansion seemed to loom over us, its presence oppressive and foreboding. "Well, here we are," Jack announced, his voice tinged with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Ready to explore?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. We made our way up the overgrown path to the front door. Jack tried the handle. Locked, of course. But he simply grinned and produced a small tool from his pocket. "Jack!" I hissed. "That's breaking and entering." He waved off my concern. "Relax. No one's been here in years. We're just having a look around." With a soft click, the lock gave way, and the door creaked open ominously. We stepped into a musty foyer, dust motes dancing in the beams of light that filtered through the cracks in the boarded-up windows. As we ventured deeper into the house, the floorboards groaning beneath our feet, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every shadow seemed to move, every creak and groan of the old house setting my nerves on edge. We had just entered what appeared to be a study when we heard it, a loud thump from the floor above, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Jack and I froze, our eyes meeting in a moment of shared panic. We weren't alone in this abandoned mansion after all. "Maybe it's just the wind," I whispered, trying to convince myself more than Jack. But then a voice low and gravelly echoed through the house. "Who dares to disturb my rest?" In that moment, I realized that our little adventure had just become far more dangerous than we could have ever imagined. My heart pounded in my chest as Jack and I exchanged terrified glances. The footsteps above us grew louder, accompanied by a slow, dragging sound. "We need to get out of here," I whispered urgently, tugging at Jack's arm. But Jack, ever the thrill-seeker, shook his head. "No way," he hissed back. "This is exactly what we came for. Let's see who's up there." Before I could protest, he was moving towards the grand staircase in the foyer. Cursing under my breath, I followed him, every instinct screaming at me to turn and run. As we ascended the stairs, the wood creaking beneath our feet, the sounds above grew more distinct. There was a rhythmic thumping, punctuated by what sounded like chains. We reached the landing, and Jack pointed silently to a door at the end of the hallway. A faint light flickered beneath it. Swallowing hard, we crept towards it. Jack reached for the doorknob, but I grabbed his wrist. "Are you insane?" I mouthed silently. He grinned, that reckless spark in his eyes. "Trust me," he whispered back. With a swift motion, he threw the door open. The scene that greeted us was unlike anything I could have imagined. The room was lit by dozens of candles, casting eerie shadows on the walls. In the center stood a figure in a tattered suit, his face hidden behind an old-fashioned diving helmet. Chains hung from his wrists and ankles, rattling as he turned to face us. "Ah," the figure said, his voice echoing metallically through the helmet. "Visitos at last." Jack and I stood frozen in the doorway, too shocked to move or speak. The figure took a step towards us, chains dragging across the floor. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I've been waiting so long for someone to find me." As he reached up to remove the helmet, I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. Whatever secrets this mansion held, we were about to uncover them. And I had a feeling our lives would never be the same again. The helmet came off, revealing a face that was both familiar and impossible. It was the face from the old photographs in my father's study. The face of the eccentric millionaire who had vanished decades ago. But how could he still be alive? And why did he look exactly the same as he did in those ancient pictures? As these questions raced through my mind, I realized that our simple adventure had just become a gateway to a mystery far deeper and more dangerous than we could have ever imagined. The man's piercing blue eyes locked onto us, a mixture of relief and desperation in his gaze. "You've finally come," he said, his voice raspy from disuse. "I knew someone would find me eventually." Jack found his voice first. Who are you?" he stammered. The man smiled sadly. "My name is Edward Blackwood. I was once the owner of this mansion, but now, I'm its prisoner." I felt a chill run down my spine. "But that's impossible," I said. "Edward Blackwood disappeared over 50 years ago. You can't be him." "Ah, but I am," he replied, taking a step closer. "Time works differently here. I've been trapped in this house, in this moment, for what feels like an eternity." Jack and I exchanged bewildered glances. This was far beyond anything we had expected to encounter. "How?" I asked, my curiosity overcoming my fear. "How is this possible?" Edward's face darkened. "It's a long story, one that involves dark magic, betrayal, and a curse. But perhaps you two are the key to breaking it." He moved towards an ornate desk in the corner of the room, pulling out a dusty leather-bound book. "This journal contains everything I've learned about the curse and how to break it. I've tried for years, but I can't do it alone. I need help from the outside world." Jack's eyes lit up with excitement. "We'll help you," he said without hesitation. I was more cautious. "Wait, Jack. We don't know what we're getting into. This could be dangerous." Edward nodded solemnly. "The young man is right to be cautious. It is indeed dangerous. But if you choose to help, you could not only free me but also prevent a great evil from spreading beyond these walls." As he spoke, the candles in the room flickered ominously, and I could have sworn I heard whispers echoing from the shadows. Jack turned to me, his eyes pleading. "Come on. This is the adventure of a lifetime. We can't walk away now." I looked from Jack to Edward, weighing our options. Part of me wanted to run, to forget this ever happened, and return to my normal life. But another part, a part I hadn't known existed until this moment, craved the mystery and the chance to do something truly extraordinary. Taking a deep breath, I made my decision. "All right," I said. "Tell us what we need to do." Edward's face broke into a relieved smile. "Thank you," he said, handing us the journal. "Read this. Learn its secrets. But be warned, once you start, there's no turning back. The forces at work here will know you're involved, and they won't let you go easily." As if on cue, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing half the candles and plunging us into semi-darkness. In the shadows, I could have sworn I saw shapes moving, watching us with malevolent intent. We had just stepped into a world of magic and danger, and I realized that our simple summer adventure had become something far more perilous, and far more important than we could have ever imagined. Over the next few days, Jack and I immersed ourselves in Edward's journal, uncovering the dark history of the mansion and the curse that bound him. We learned of ancient rituals, hidden artifacts, and a malevolent entity that sought to use the house as a gateway to our world. Our summers of carefree fun were replaced by clandestine visits to the mansion, decoding cryptic messages and searching for the items needed to break the curse. We lied to our friends and family, making excuses for our absences and strange behavior. As we delved deeper into the mystery, strange occurrences plagued us even outside the mansion. Shadowy figures followed us home, and nightmares of the house and its secrets haunted our sleep. Finally, on a moonless night, we gathered the necessary artifacts and prepared for the ritual to break the curse. The air crackled with energy as we began the incantation Edward had taught us. Suddenly, the mansion came alive with otherworldly howls and violent tremors. Shadows coalesced into monstrous forms, trying to stop us. But we pressed on, our voices rising above the chaos. In a blinding flash of light, it was over. The shadows dissipated, and the house fell silent. Edward, free at last, aged rapidly before our eyes, his years catching up with him in moments. With a grateful smile, he faded away, finally at peace. As dawn broke, Jack and I stood amid the ruins of the now crumbling mansion, forever changed by our experience. We had faced unimaginable dangers, confronted ancient evils, and emerged victorious. But as we made our way home, exhausted and exhilarated, we realized that our adventure had come at a cost. We were no longer the carefree teenagers we had been just weeks ago. We had glimpsed a hidden world of magic and danger, and we could never go back to our old lives. As we parted ways, Jack grinned at me, his eyes still sparkling with that familiar mischief. "Same time next summer?" he asked. I couldn't help but laugh, despite everything we'd been through. "Let's take a break from cursed mansions for a while," I replied. "But who knows what other mysteries are out there, waiting to be solved." We both knew that this was just the beginning. Our lives had been irrevocably altered, and somewhere, out there, new adventures were calling our names. As I walked home, I thought about how I would explain my summer to my parents. They would never believe the truth, of course, but that was okay. Some secrets, I realized, were meant to be kept. And as for the future, my parents had so carefully planned for me. Well, I had a feeling it was going to look very different now. After all, once you've saved the world from an ancient curse, a regular 9-to-5 job just doesn't hold the same appeal. With a smile on my face and the weight of our incredible secret on my shoulders, I looked out at the sea, wondering what other mysteries it might be hiding. Whatever came next, I knew I was ready for it. As the first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, Jack and I made our way down the cliff path, leaving the crumbling ruins of the mansion behind us. We were exhausted, our clothes torn and dirty, but there was a newfound strength in our steps. "We did it," Jack said, his voice filled with wonder. "We actually did it," I nodded, still processing everything that had happened. "Yeah, we did, but what now?" We paused at the edge of town, the familiar sights of the sleepy coastal community coming into view. Everything looked the same. And yet, to us, the world had fundamentally changed. "We can't tell anyone," I said, voicing what we both knew. "They'd never believe us." Jack agreed. "It'll be our secret, the summer we saved the world." As we prepared to part ways, Jack turned to me with a serious expression. "You know, after all this, I don't think I can go back to my old life. The petty rebellions, the meaningless trouble. It all seems so small now." I understood completely. I feel the same. My parents' plans for my future. They just don't fit anymore. We stood in silence for a moment, contemplating our transformed perspectives. "So, what will you do?" I asked Jack. He grinned, a hint of his old mischief returning. "I think I'll travel, seek out other mysteries. There's a whole world of the unknown out there, and now we know it exists." I nodded, feeling a similar pull. I might do the same. After college, maybe? There's still so much to learn. As the town began to wake up around us, we knew it was time to return to our normal lives. At least for now. "See you around, partner in crime solving," Jack said with a wink as he turned to leave. I watched him go, then made my way home. As I approached our summer house, I saw my parents' car in the driveway. They were back early. Taking a deep breath, I prepared myself to face them, knowing I'd have to come up with a plausible story for my disheveled appearance and late return. But as I walked up the path, I felt a newfound confidence. I had faced unimaginable dangers and come out stronger. Whatever challenges lay ahead, be it disappointed parents or the uncertainties of the future, I knew I could handle them. I paused at the door, casting one last look at the sea. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, more mysteries waited, and someday I'd be ready to seek them out. With a smile, I turned the doorknob and stepped inside,